All right, so our next lecture deals with a different problem that the economy faces, and that's something called inflation. Now, inflation is defined as an increase in the price level of the economy. So we're not talking about just one price going up. We're talking about all of the prices in the economy increasing. Now, normally, inflation isn't a problem. To a certain degree, we always have inflation. Inflation in the United States up until recently, and we haven't had recent reports since the coronavirus, but inflation has been running in the 2 to 2.5% range, which is fairly low. It's not a problem in the economy. To a certain degree, inflation that we're seeing now is good. It's kind of hard to think of inflation as good, but it's good because remember, what we learned was that price is the signaling mechanism of the economy. It tells consumers what to buy, but it also tells producers what to make. So in a case today, think about hand sanitizer. The demand for hand sanitizer is so high and there's not enough supply, so the price of hand sanitizer got bid up. We were willing to pay more and more for it. Look at those people who, were willing to pay $500 for a small bottle of hand sanitizer on eBay or wherever the heck they were buying it. All right, so inflation to a certain degree is not necessarily a bad thing. When we talk about inflation as a problem in the economy, we are talking about it when it goes well beyond the 2% range. In the United States, when inflation gets about 5-6%, that's when we really start feeling it. And there are certain very important issues that occur when inflation starts getting out of control. The first is that the value of the dollar drops. What we mean by that is what a dollar can purchase drops. For example, if today you go into the Verizon store and you want to buy a phone, and that phone is $300, you don't want to put it on their payment plan, you don't want to charge it, you say, okay, I'm going to come back and I'll bring $300. Well, you come back a month later to buy your phone and you walk up to the guy and say, here's my $300, I want the phone we talked about. And the guy says, are you kidding? That phone is now worth $600. What's happened to the purchasing power of your money? The value of the dollar has dropped. Last month you can buy an entire phone for $300, but now you can only buy half a phone for $300. So that's what we mean is that your dollar purchases less. This also creates a problem for those of us who have assets denominated in dollars. For example, the value of your home, the value of any savings accounts you may have, the value of any stock portfolio you may have. If the value of the dollar drops, that also decreases the value of all of the assets denominated in dollars, right? So all of a sudden, it becomes less attractive to hold dollars. Think about this. If the value of the dollar is dropping, why are you saving money? Right? The longer you hold that money in your savings account, the less it's worth. Now, as the value of the dollar begins to drop, people decide they don't want to hold dollars. They would rather change those dollars into something else that may hold value. That something else could be gold. That something else could be euros, or it could be commodities. For example, I decide the value of my money is dropping quickly. So I'm going to run out to the store and purchase the first thing that I see. I don't know, tires for a motorcycle, right? Well, it's kind of ridiculous, me buying motorcycle tires. I don't own a motorcycle. But from a consumer perspective, during a period of inflation, me buying motorcycle tires is a rational decision because the value of those motorcycle tires will hold value over time better than money will. What also happens when we go out and just purchase the first things we see, which happens during a period of inflation. You think the shelves now are bare? If we have a very bad period of inflation, they would be even worse. There have been cases in countries which had very bad periods of inflation. For any of you who were from Latin America, you may have seen these firsthand. But anybody who took world history in the United States would have seen this when you studied Germany during the Weimar period. Weimar period was the period between the two world wars. Germany had such bad inflation that people started getting paid twice a day. Once at lunchtime and then the other at dinner time. They'd get paid for half a day at lunchtime. They'd go out and spend their money. And then they would come back and work the afternoon into the early evening, get paid again, and then go out and spend that money. Now, this may seem ridiculous, but it was highly rational. The money that they got paid at lunchtime would not have purchased the same amount of goods as it could at lunchtime. If they went out shopping, if they waited to get paid once a day, the money they made in the morning would have been buying less. So they got paid twice a day. We've never had inflation that bad in this country in recent times. But it is a possibility. The problem that this increase in spending has is it feeds upon itself. The more frequently you get paid, the more you are demanding, the faster you spend your money, the faster prices go up because supply can't keep up with the demand, and it gets out of control. And that's usually what we call hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is inflation usually running at the 50% mark or greater, although there's no really agreed upon value for hyperinflation. It's inflation basically that's totally out of control. All right. One of the many problems with inflation is that the banking system begins to collapse. Why? Well, if you're not saving money, there's no money in the banking system for the banks to lend out. So if they have no money to lend out, why are they there? No money going into the banking system hurts it. They have no money to lend out. The problem is, at this point, when hyperinflation gets set, people want to borrow money because they want to spend. Well, you're trying to borrow money. There's not enough money being saved, because remember, savings is necessary for investment. So the demand for money is going up the demand for money from the banks is going up. There's not a lot of supply. So the interest rate starts going up and up and up, which is one way of trying to control inflation, because If the interest rate goes up, people are not going to borrow. But the interest rate never goes up sufficiently to encourage people to save more money. So we've got a system now where your money is losing value. You're trying to spend it as quickly as you can so you can turn it into an asset that you can hold, or that you, more importantly, could barter. This is another problem caused by inflation, is the economy moves to a barter economy. Barter, remember, is exchanging a good for a good. So me purchasing motorcycle tires makes perfect sense if I can then, excuse me, turn around and exchange those motorcycle tires for something I need. Let's say I need a laptop. So I have to find somebody who has a laptop that they're willing to sell and who wants motorcycle tires. Well, this becomes a real problem because do I know somebody who has a laptop who wants motorcycle tires? All right. May require me to find somebody who, maybe the person who has a laptop wants a TV. So I have to find somebody who has a TV who's willing to take motorcycle tires. Then I take the TV to the guy who has the laptop and I make the exchange. Can you see how barter is a very cumbersome method of commerce? Not something that's very good. Just to put this inflation stuff into perspective, let's look at some worst case scenarios. Normally we look at Germany in the Weimar period as the worst inflation we've had. It really hasn't been the worst. Germany in 1923 had an inflation rate of 29,500% per month. Now, that's such a ridiculous number, it's hard to even think of. But if you think of it in the fact that prices doubled a little over every 24 hours, that kind of lets you know what things were. The worst inflation that we've ever had worldwide was in Hungary in 1946. And that inflation was 1.3 times 10 to the 16th percent per month. So that ends up being 1.3 quadrillion percent per month. I don't even know what that means. There's just too many zeros there. But what it boils down to is prices doubled every 15.6 hours. So a ridiculous increase in prices. Now, theoretically, in the United States, the worst inflation rate we ever had was in 1778, and that was a 29.8% inflation rate. They didn't calculate inflation in that time the way we calculate inflation. So really, the worst inflation rate we've had in our history, in modern history, I should say, is June of 1920, when it was 23.7% per month. Now, in my lifetime, yes, I'm older than dirt, but in my lifetime, the highest inflation rate we've ever had was 13.58% in 1980. Now, most of you were not alive in 1980, so in your lifetime, you've never really seen inflation in the United States like we're talking about, really bad inflation. And hopefully, you won't see it for quite a while. All right, so we are going to move on now. We're going to have to change over to the next lecture because I'm running out of time here. So we'll move to the next lecture slide, which will be Inflation Lecture 2.